Welcome back to our Awaken25.com video narratives. This is video narrative number 7, Summation and Conclusions, Part 2. In this video, we will summarize our contemporary assessment of the primary institutions, focusing on what we see as being the biggest issues and opportunities to consider. Our assessment of contemporary society, in light of the concepts of values, morality, and political ideology, is relevant and penetrates all the primary institutions in our culture, which directly influence and speaks to us, in shaping the value development of our families and lives. Primary institutions like religion, faith across the denominations, our literary, civic, and legal worlds, big business and industry, social and leadership in America and the world, academia and learning, from K through 12 in colleges and universities, and the arts, music, and the vast forms of communications. In our prior video narratives, we examined all these primary institutional groups in our contemporary American society, and we assessed the state of each, weighing in with the good and the not so good. Invariably, we found a general weakening across these cultural institutions, a weakening caused by the penetration and growth of a malignant virus upon our society, a virus called moral relativism. Let's take a moment and summarize the significant points we see in each primary institutional group of today. Keep in mind, our intent at the end of this is to figure out, what does it all mean? As understanding the importance of knowing and living foundational values in our lives will aid in building an insight and awareness towards finding a better way forward for all of us in our prevailing culture and society, and ultimately, back to God. Religion is our first primary institutional group, and it encompasses all the major religions of today, predominant in the world and recognizing a God and the spirit of love. In the institution of religion, what we found is of grave concern. Faith in America, in Europe, is in decline. Based on Pew Research, we see religion and faith in steady decline. Today's youth are falling away from faith at an alarming rate, especially among millennials. Just in the past 7 years, Pew Research noted 20 million people have dropped off from religion, and the rate is increasing as each year passes. Some pundits claim witchcraft is the fastest growing religion today. Atheists openly mock Christians in national ads, public assemblies, and in hometown communities. We've seen significant loss of moral authority by religious leaders. Radical Islam scourges the world with hate and murder. God is being pushed out of our schools, public events, and the military. Satanism is publicly rearing its ugly head. A secular age is being encouraged and pushed by radical liberals. And moral relativism is actively, deliberately weakening the relationship between the American people and God. In the literary, legal, and civic primary institutions, there's significant influence occurring upon our culture and society. In the literary world, amongst the intellectuals, philosophers, writers, thinkers, and professionals, we continue to see strident efforts to subjugate absolute morality and displace God in our lives by championing relative morality and the emptiness of atheism, making man the center of morality instead of a supreme and loving God. In the legal institutions of America, we've witnessed a near collapse in the trust of national leaders, like Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Congress. We've endured seemingly endless Obama scandals, like the IRS, Fast and Furious, the DOJ, FBI, DNI, Iran, Hezbollah, and there was significant distrust of people around President Obama, like Eric Holder, Susan Rice, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, John Brennan, James Clapper, Ben Rhodes, and others. American trust in Congress has bottomed, with a persistent distrust of both the House and the Senate, and distrust in America's political system, the division and polarization. A divisive and bitter 2016 presidential campaign has added to polarization. DNC corruption, Fusion GPS, British spies, and Russian meddling. Then there was the WikiLeaks, and Hillary's campaign smear merchants like David Brock. We had CNN debate cheating thanks to Donna Brazile advanced leaking of questions to Hillary. Debbie Wasserman Schultz runs a corrupt DNC with scandal. And don't forget the Hillary Clinton scandals, Hillary's email, the Clinton Foundation, the Uranium One deal with Russia. The salacious anti-Trump dossier we learned was paid for by the DNC and Hillary's campaign, and later used by the DOJ and FBI in collusion to obtain a FISA warrant for spying on Trump's campaign staffers. The left liberal targeting of Donald Trump's presidency, attempting to bring it down by any means possible, given rise to fake Russian collusion charges, which morphs into obstruction of justice, fake concerns about Trump's mental stability, the appointment of the Mueller special counsel investigation, conflated with DOJ and FBI bias on the FISA warrants and domestic spying. The hate Trump movement, aided and abetted by a corrupt, biased mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, the New York Times, and elsewhere. Distrust in our judicial system of laws, courts, and enforcement, a divided Supreme Court, 5 conservatives to 4 liberals, constitutional focus versus judicial activism, an impaired Department of Justice, politicized and scandal-ridden DOJ, Eric Holder scandals, the Loretta Lynch-Bill Clinton tarmac meeting, expansion of sanctuary cities, Obama's open borders and illegal immigration, and growth of gangs, violence, and MS-13. The attack of free speech and expression on college campuses, free speech zones, blocking conservative speakers, the squandering of national focus and strategy, encouraging a culture of drug dependency, Obama's excessive commutations and pardons, Chelsea Manning, LGBTQ, and transgender bathroom directives, a combined national debt of $173 trillion, a nation on the brink of bankruptcy, national economic misery, and a mainstream media creating fake and misleading news. In civics, we've seen a decline in American civic participation, a decline in neighborhood safety, the very worst race relations in decades, rebellious minorities and race hustlers unabated, hate police movements, police murders, riots in major cities, open borders and broken immigration, a president that divided the nation instead of uniting it, and murders in major cities were up significantly, years in a row. In business and industry, we have witnessed the ongoing greedy hand of moral relativists and their twisted nihilistic values, globalists primary among them, causing a seemingly relentless drift towards offshoring American manufacturing and the consequent loss of higher-paying jobs and related careers, all of which has hit the American economy hard, very hard, especially in the middle class and blue-collar jobs. Greed on Wall Street continued among many like Madoff and other white-collar crooks, eventually leading to the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. We witnessed bad attempted trade deals and climate commitments, the continuing loss of American intellectual properties in China. We experienced sustained high unemployment, especially youth. Historic increases in the employment non-participation rate occurred. Many companies lost focus on their purpose and investment in America. Business leaders soaked their shareholders and customers. Many of our youth responded with anti-capitalistic sentiment. fueled by socialist agitators and professional protesters. Remember Occupy Wall Street. For years, we had to face anemic GDP growth. The Obama administration was incapable of turning things around. His commitment of nearly $1 trillion to infrastructure investment resulted in progressive pats on the back to liberal constituencies, and no shovel-ready jobs materialized, nor real infrastructure improvements. In fact, the Obama administration couldn't clearly account for where all the money went after it was all spent. Unfortunately, under the Obama administration, little was done to get the economy turned around, as presidential attention drifted to inconsequential populist issues. Fortunately, in 2017, the American voter chose new leadership, and President Trump was elected. Together with Republican policies, 8 years of liberal misdirection was nearly corrected in 1 year alone, with a rollback of nearly every senseless Obama policy. And most importantly, the economic engine was turned back on. Tax reform, regulations reduced, accountability enforced. Where we experienced millions of manufacturing jobs outsourced with high unemployment and a record-breaking low civilian participation, the numbers in 2018 under the Republicans have steadily reversed. Our institutions of society, our culture, and our social leadership are all under assault. Regretfully, we see a general weakening of these institutions in contemporary America, under a relentless intrusion of relative moralism, and across the country's social fabric. The oppressive weight is now directly upon our lives and families. We see a weakening of social and leadership under a growing amoral culture. We find this evidenced by shifting value positions in our general populations, our leadership and social institutions, as liberal progressives have asserted their relative moral agenda throughout our society. Liberal progressives act and legislate against the most innocent in our society. Over 60 million unborn babies have been slaughtered in the U.S. since Roe v. Wade. A hardline feminist culture rails against life in America, pushing the deception of women's convenience and pleasure over the life of an unborn child. Organizations like Planned Parenthood slaughter about 300,000 unborn children a year and sell their body parts. They openly promote abortion at any time legislation under liberal progressives in the Democratic Party. Only the Republicans stand for life of the unborn. The American family as a primary institution is under assault by a morally decaying culture. We see the nuclear family in a precipitous decline. There's a historic drop in two-parent households and a huge growth in single-parent homes, mainly moms at the head. There's a burgeoning of out-of-wedlock births occurring, the most in history. The left has distorted sexual identity with progressive agendas. In America today, there's an unacceptable frequency of child abuse and a continuing violence against women. Drug abuse, especially heroin and opioids, is at a crisis level in many cities. Violent gangs have spread across our great nation and deepened their grip. 1.2 million strong, nearly the size of our entire active military. That's scary. The drug trade is corrupting our culture, banks, lawyers, and law enforcement. All the while it kills our people, many children and teens. Violent crime and murder is rising in our major cities. Extreme hate through mass murders is killing hundreds across the country. Radical Islamic terror is killing thousands of innocents across the world. Our world and national leadership has dithered, especially under Obama. The United Nations is still consumed in corruption, while conflict is growing around the world, although it's being reversed under Trump. And across our national leadership, who speaks for morality? In politics, in academia, in business, religion, professionals, and communications. Who is leading standing up to be heard? Who is leading moral discussions in our nation? Who is bearing the torch of truth in the engulfing fog of relative morality? In academia and learning, America is in serious decline, and it's not our opinion, it's a fact backed by research and statistics. Our academic institutions, from grade school through our universities, have been under constant erosion in the quality of teaching and subsequent learning by the applied tenets of the progressive liberal left. Where once the American educational institution was the envy of the world, America is now mediocre, thanks to the relentless assault of relative morality and its undisciplined left politics. American educational standards have and continue to crumble, and the results show it. The United States now performs on academic rankings across all major countries in the world somewhere around the 30th percentile, a significant fall from the top percentiles now occupied by Asian countries. The relative moralists have ushered in their lower standards of achievement. Politics and political correctness have now ambushed our schools, and free speech is under assault in our universities, muting inquisitive minds as well as free thinking. All of it, relative groundwork for clearing the way to greater progressive deterioration, for an unopposed onslaught of liberal progressivism to saturate classrooms with bias and misdirection. Morality and faith is being pushed out of the classroom, the public athletic fields, and oftentimes Christian teachings in particular get marginalized by educators and professors. When it comes to academic performance, liberal progressives have lowered the bar over 4 decades, as they and the teacher unions have successfully gained control over the American educational system, all of which has resulted in a continuous decline of American educational performance. The liberals have been all too willing to accept mediocre performance level of their making, while they abandoned high, rigorous educational standards of yesterday. The progressives now herald mediocrity and accept it as a performance level to be embraced, when for 2 centuries such inferior performance was disdained by national and community leaders. Without question, our educational system is slowly and clearly eroding. Our nation's world academic standing has dropped. Our educational standards have weakened. Liberal bias is suffocating free expression and learning. Critical thinking is not developed. Learning environments are deteriorating. The expense of higher education is prohibited to middle and lower classes. The cause is specifically traced to a culture stressed by moral relativity. Political correctness, multiculturalism, intolerant liberal practices all get expressed through the optics of progressive relativists in academia, our universities, and our schools. And learning is the casualty, and our communities and nation then suffer. In the institutions of the arts, music, and communications, our culture has been subjected to tremendous intrusion by moral relativism, intentfully corrupting our youth, confusing social sensibilities of the general public, and in the process ruining the hearts and minds of a generation. We are mindful of balancing our critique with the principle of creative free expression, giving fair ground to that important liberty. However, there should still be limits to that liberty, and observance of sensible boundaries of good taste and respect towards others, especially towards peoples of faith in things regarded as sacred. A telling example of how moral relativism has encroached upon the arts can be shown in one simple but telling image. We're all familiar with the Christian Last Supper and recognize it has a special and holy significance to over 1 billion Christians worldwide. Yet regardless of the sacredness of the Last Supper, we have moral relativists in San Francisco hijack the holy image in a perverse depiction of leather-strapped gays and lesbians, mocking in hideous caricature Christ's Last Supper, and giving us an image of raunchy perversion, in contrast malignant to the holy image with its hatefulness, all for the purpose of promoting their annual Folsom Street Fair, an event dedicated to a selfish lifestyle of debauchery and unrestrained sexual behavior. Take a closer look at this so-called artistic advertisement for the gay community. Look on the table where Christ had wine and bread. These gays, scantily dressed, irreverently display their sex toys and implements used in their erotic routines. Where Christ had the ingredients of life, they mock with obscene sex tools and leather whips. Further, look at all the companies advertising and supporting the fair. Recognize there is an entire industry behind the image and the depravity it stands for. When you wonder what moral relativism looks like, this is the image you should remember. And this is what goes beyond the boundaries of good taste and sensibility in the arts. In the arts, the moral relativists have been vicious towards people of faith and destructive towards decades of positive morality. They've been unabashed supporters of a free, guiltless, hedonistic lifestyles, which scorn God and Judeo-Christian teachings. Hollywood is a main player in this deception, with hollow and bankrupt imagery, and bankrupt moral leadership managing the studios. In the music world, the moral relativists promote similar slander and marginalization of Christian symbols. Recent genres have emerged which leverage violence and hatred, despoiling young minds and hearts at developmental ages, and they do it for money, vanity, and power. Last, in the communication industry, TV, film, news, internet, print, mega media companies vie for control and domination of the industry, resisting government control on content and standards. Content is sliding off the scale in violence, deception, vulgarity, profanity, and sex. Moral relativists are having a field day trampling good values. Our youth are most vulnerable and are being fully exploited. News from CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS is liberally slanted, dishonest, politicized, unbalanced, and many times fake, misleading trusting audiences into a web of concocted lies and hidden agendas. Film and TV push moral depravity with increasing aggressiveness. The internet is growing in leaps and bounds, and following the other communication companies in pursuit of bias, violence, and addictive gaming. Although we have pointed out much of what is wrong in our primary institutions, all said, we rightfully acknowledge there's always an admixture of good and bad in nearly everything, and our institutions are clearly no exception, thank God. Yet, as we've said before, the good is often despoiled by a little poison, and unfortunately, our primary institutions today are getting a lot of relativist poison in their houses. Our unmistakable caution is this: if left unchecked, our institutions, along with our culture and society, will be brought down, and our way of life will be destroyed forever. Let's not let this happen. This ends our summation. In our next video narrative, we will draw out some key conclusions to help bring it all together. Please, now go to our conclusions in video number 7, part 3.